Hello and welcome to this week's episode, very special episode of Hired, where we will be debunking employer branding. I'm your host, Mike Thompson, and I'm going to bring out my very special host because I did say we are going to be debunking. It's not going to be me because I am not nearly as qualified as my guest to be talking about this topic. Sia is going to be joining us. She's actually located in Spain, all the way in Spain. So she's going to be joining us live in just a second. And before I bring her out, I want to tell you a bit about Sia, our research department here, because, Spark TV has a massive budget to do some research. So I had the team compile everything we could learn about Sia before we bring her out. Let me tell you about her a little bit. So I'm going to start about the professional version of Sia. Here's how she's described by her peers. She is someone that is very approachable and warm, compassionate, flexible. These are some of my favorites. Creative, has a commitment to excellence, has an extremely positive attitude. And this one was my favorite. She can win the hearts of teammates with her inexhaustible energy and inclusiveness. If that's not a tagline for somebody, I don't really know what is. I'd like to steal the inexhaustible energy tagline myself. Aside from her professional accolades in terms of what she does, being a master employer branding consultant, she's also lived all over the world, which we're going to get into. And correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe our research I'm wrong, but can speak 5 different languages. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to my friend and my very special guest, Sia. Sia.
Hey, Mike. Thank you so much for this extremely kind introduction. I hope I can live up to all of this. Yeah, I'm going to do my best.
So, is it correct you can speak 5 languages? Is that accurate?
3 fluently, and then 2, I get around. I get around with the key topics.
That's 4 more than I can speak. So you've got me on the language component as well. Now, before we jump into employer branding, debunking it, and letting all of your, I don't want to say rage, but letting all of your energy come out and passion towards this topic, you've lived everywhere in the world. What has been the most impactful place you've lived, and where do you want to live next?
Great question. I'll start with the most impactful. It would probably be KL, Malaysia, because it was an accelerator of my career journey. And it was the first time I really, truly moved to the other side of the world and lived in a place with a completely different, both culture, but also the work environment. So it definitely taught me a lot. And next is yet to be discovered. I always like to keep it open, wherever my dreams take me.
That's amazing. I love that, and you're flexible, adaptable, and I say this honestly because we've chatted a lot, outside of this, and the lens in terms of just your background, different cultures you've experienced. You see employer branding like nobody else has seen it, just based on the way you've experienced life, and I think it's super important and super impactful for this conversation. So let's jump right into it. Employer branding debunked is the topic, because I've heard the buzzwords. You've probably heard it because you're deeper in the space constantly, about everybody talking about employer branding, invest in your employer brand, employer. In your opinion, what is the 1, 3, 5 biggest misconceptions of what employer branding is? And I'm going to kick this over to you on the big screen.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, just to kick things off, as you said, I think employer brand, EB, has become a very hot buzzword to throw around lately. As a result, I've seen people thinking of it as like a band-aid solution to fix all your problems. Not receiving enough applications must be the employer branding. Candidates dropping out halfway through the application process, just sprinkle some employer branding magic dust out there. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it definitely plays a part, but it's not always the cause of the problem. And I think it stems from not truly understanding what employer branding is and can do. And yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to chat to you and debunk together. And I picked 4 misconceptions of what I thought would be the most meaningful for this conversation. So, like the first one, misconception number one is that employer brand needs to be built. And I always say that no matter if you have a company of 2 or 2,000 employees, your employer brand already exists as long as you have employees. Your brand is already a living organism that needs your attention and care. So, employer brand is not owned by HR or even your employer brand manager. It's company's reputation as a workplace, and every department, employee, every leadership team member decision can make an impact. So this is how I see it. Um, and the role of somebody looking after organization's employer brand is to help uncover these gold nuggets that make the company attractive for the desired talent. And the role that you need to play is to nurture, not create it. Of course, how you do it is through actively defining and managing your employer brand, to help to ensure consistency, increase reach and awareness, maybe even point out gaps that should be addressed internally. But this all already exists within an organization, and that's my main point. So I often describe the role of an employer brand manager as a detective with their magnifying glass, trying to spot opportunities to help make a brand stronger by actively managing and looking after that perception. um, I think there's a saying that the grass is greener where you water it. And I think it's very true about employer brand. It's about making the effort to look after your grass. If there's any pests in your grass, treat the grass so it can grow further and not poison the entire lawn. Like water and cut it, look after it so it can grow and flourish. As you can see on my background, I have a lot of plants. So like all these gardening allegories. I'm done with that for the first one, but I really truly believe in looking after your grass, your plants, and your people. um, yeah. So misconception number two is that I've always heard is um, that like EB is a project, but it's not. Your job is never done. And this is probably one thing that still I hear from time to time. It baffles me every time. So when leaders ask, when will our careers website be finished? Or, well, once we have our employer value proposition, our employer branding work is done. Or even like in the light of the recent news with a lot of layoffs or hiring freezes that affect a lot of companies, leaders can assume that this means that a break or a pause for their employer brand as well. And yeah, it might give you like a second to take a breath, to rethink your short term strategy. But actually, the purpose is never to just attract talent. It's also about creating a positive emotional connections with existing and potential colleagues. So I think, in fact, the biggest mistake a company can do is to pause that work when things are slowing down for a while, because once the hiring picks up again, and hopefully it does, they run the risk of being in a disadvantage and starting the cycle again from the beginning instead of working smart and yeah, preparing for the next hiring surge. So my take on this is that employer branding work never stops because it's a continuous effort for as long as you have employees or care about your perception. My third misconception that I would like to debunk is that there's only one single correct employer value proposition. Yeah, that's an interesting one because I feel like your employer value proposition or like EVP aims to answer the question, why do candidates join your company? Why do they stay as opposed to going somewhere else? And this answer will be different depending on who you ask within the business. And I mean, it's quite obvious when we talk about it that, it will vary based on employee seniority, their location, career growth goals, job function, demographics, so on. But in real life scenarios, once you get on to help build out this, you often are met with the task to uncover the answer. And my solution to this is to bring a set of like universal pillars or common denominators that are experienced by everyone in the organization. And that is the part of the research phase. The the crucial part is what comes up next, when you actually need to identify the ones that you want to be known for, that are the most authentic to you as an organization and matter the most to your key employment groups. And here's where things can get spicy sometimes, because as we know, the outcome often depends on who is in the room making the final decision. And my take on that is, as long as you do your due diligence during the research and analysis phase and map out the key pillars, you're able to identify things that are at least are authentic, that stand the ground of, have proof points. And the good thing is that after you develop it, it's still not set in stone. EVP is another living organism. It needs to be revisited, reviewed, reworked every few years anyway, because you need to be able to keep up with talent and market trends, and even some shifts in the company's strategy. So the goal here is not really to find the single best proposition, the one and only, but rather to align with the right motives and feelings on how these messages sit with your different target audiences within a business. Yeah, so that's the third one. And the fourth one is a bit controversial, so I left it for last. Um, but I would like to debunk it. Let's do this. Um, it's employer branding work is about selling the company as the dream place to work. And I picked it because I think most people would probably agree that this is indeed the goal of the function. But one thing I've noticed whenever I interact with other employer branding professionals, that while they all wear multiple hats and are basically the human version of chameleons, adapting every day to whatever task they might have. Like one day it's about designing an event booth experience. Sure. Storyboarding for a video shoot. Absolutely. I don't know, designing merchandise for a conference. Let's do this. But everyone I know really does have an extremely passionate side to uncover and tell the real story of the organization in a creative and engaging way. And I would even say that from the outside, we make our work maybe seem extremely fun and effortless. However, my personal opinion is, more than dream sellers, employer branding really feels the pulse of an organization. So from, reviewing negative Glassdoor reviews, really, empathizing what somebody might have been through, the positives, the not so positives, to maybe like being on the call on the weekend to monitor channels because of a positive, negative press release, all the way to watching employees flock because of internal issues, like you name it. We see it all. We see a lot of, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So my opinion, employer branding is not, or it should not be only about telling happy and positive stories or selling companies as a dream workplace. A lot of times it's also about having tough conversations to address things that are not working. Maybe saying no when people ask to publish things that don't have any proof points and potentially can damage the reputation. So it's a lot of like risk analysis involved as well. Or maybe pushing initiatives that can contribute to making a step towards becoming a place where everyone can be themselves and leave a better version of themselves when they joined. So it's about telling the story of a company who genuinely cares. And yeah, it's not a buzzword. To generate a sense of belonging is very difficult, and it involves everyone from an intern who joined 2 weeks ago to the CEO to make the effort. So yeah, those are the key four things that I wanted to discuss with you.
I mean, where do we jump in here? That's amazing. Like those are, it's an interesting perspective specifically on the ongoing nature of employer branding, that it never stops. It's not a project. It's not something you do when you're hiring a lot of people that you point to say, hey, this is what we need to invest in order to achieve this goal. It exists already. And it's, what do you do with this nurture it and make sure that it's something that is ongoing. Do you find that is a hard concept for leadership to hear and think about, something that needs constant investment? Or do you feel like a normal brand, and from a marketing perspective, there's more parallels to that and those conversations are becoming more positive?
I think it obviously depends on the conversations and the people involved. My favorite word always says it depends, because that's the truth. But there's definitely can be some uncomfortable truths and difficult conversations to have. But as I explained, I think all the people who decide to do this job, they're not just marketers, they're there for the people, and at the end they want to make sure that they can proudly sell, market, advertise, tell the story of the organization that they're working for. So a lot of the times it is hard to have this kind of first opening conversation about what we stand for with leaders. And I'm kind of like already jumping into some of the ways that we can make this effective in an organization.
Yeah, go for it.
The reality is that it's you need to kind of explain this to the stakeholders. It's not about what you want to say or how you perceive it, or like what you think it is. It's about making the conversation about your talent and their experience, their needs, their skills that they want to bring, the way they want to grow, how they see their growth, career paths in the organization. And the role of employer brand is actually just to guide, advise, and influence senior leaders, leadership team on this journey, because getting their buy-in is crucial. Without their buy-in, you're kind of just gonna walk around in circles. So to make the right moves, it just needs to be a partnership, like an open dialogue. And leave your ego at the door and come ready to learn. Leave meeting with a lot of insights about your colleagues, because we can definitely dish out the truth, because we talk with a lot of people.
Well, and I love what you said about how employer branding is, kind of detective work. You're uncovering what already exists, and you don't get to determine what your employer brand is. You're just discovering what people are reflecting. But like, almost like perception is reality. Like, you can't say and dictate if you're representing the employer brand of Spark, I can't say, Sia, this is our employer brand, this is the story I want to tell. You tell me what the story is. This is your employer brand heard from the individuals, and this is the narrative that's out there. And is that kind of the process you go through, where it's more gathering the market research, and then your storytelling comes out of the research that you gather in terms of what people are perceiving that experience to be like?
So what you said is actually quite correct. It is about understanding, and there's a lot of research, and you cannot dictate, because if you come in thinking that you have all the tools in your box, and you're just going to copy paste what you've done, it's never the case. It's really about feeling, having conversations, understanding why things are done how they are, what can be improved, what have we tried before, and really to understand how you can utilize the skills that you have, but in a new way, to tell that story in an authentic way. And it's never short term. It takes time to understand the organization truly.
And you can see now how critical employer brand is when attracting new talent, because that is what's going to draw interest. So how does employer branding and talent acquisition work well together in an organization?
I think not even within talent acquisition, but I think it's very important to have realistic expectations when talking about employer brand. So if you're just getting started, there are plenty of things that can be influenced right away to make visible change. However, as I mentioned, like, the effect of employer brand can truly be seen long-term, not overnight. So having realistic expectations, that unless you're ready to blow your budget through the roof, an entire talent market won't overnight go from, I don't know who this company is, to, I would switch my job, move countries, bring my entire family. creativity, building a perception, rethinking candidate touch points, it all takes time. And obviously there's things to measure the return on investment, because you always have some data points in every touch point, even per communication channel. You can measure your account growth year over year, monthly reviews, how many people look at your profile, how many people came at your booth and event. But moreover, there's this thing that in reality, it's not 100% quantifiable, because it's perception. It's also a very important thing is word of mouth. It's very difficult to measure with the tools that small to medium companies have, for example. So sometimes I see organization measuring for the sake of measuring, just to have data to show for the sake of presenting it without being able to explain the root cause. But I think instead, we need to add, allow things to sink in, look at the results to dictate if you need to course correct, but also keep talking to new joiners and candidates to ask how they perceived the company, what they noticed, what made them choose what made them choose you. So it's a lot of still investigative work even after you've implemented the strategy.
I love what you just said there about asking candidates why they joined, because I think that's the most powerful feedback you can get. What was it about the entire process that made you want to work here? Because that's going to give you valuable insights to what they think of the employer brand. And we've talked before about there being some levers throughout the process that can influence how, and we'll talk about candidates attracting new talent, how that can influence their perception of the employer brand. Are there certain levers you think that are really more powerful to invest in than others, that maybe some people watching this could influence their employer brand in a positive way?
We've been through a lot in the last 2 years, with the pandemic changing the way we work, followed by the great resignation or reevaluation, however you want to call it, and now going through a massive tech layoff phase. It just reminds us all that candidates are more selective than ever about what they want, where they want to work. They want to make informed decisions about the workplace that they will join, or if they decide to leave, there are definitely things that you can look at. But I just think that nowadays people want to be able to bring their entire self. There's not this idea that we have this perfect work and life balance where if something happens in one side, it doesn't affect the other. And I feel like this is going to be a major shift that a lot of candidates, it's already happening, but I think it's going to affect even more how employer branding is done, because people want to be able to bring their entire self, be psychologically safe to talk. So sometimes I think that it's also skill to do exit interviews, to look at even Glassdoor reviews from people who left, and not just say, oh, people like to complain on Glassdoor. No, people go there if that's the only last point where they can be heard. People don't like to go and vent. Actually, you know what? Everyone joins a company thinking it's going to be a great experience. I really truly believe that, or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I just think that it's about being compassionate, empathetic, listening, and allowing people to speak and be heard.
I love that in terms of, and talking about the future of employer branding, just being more heartfelt and more emotional and empathetic. And because that's what top talent is resonating with. That's what they want. They want to know, what is the essence of this company, or this individual that I'm going to, what is it? What are you like? And what, don't logic or rationalize this experience for me. Tell me how this feels to work here and what this is going to be like. Do you see that as the future is kind of encompassing this more to kind of create that emotional connection that top talent would have with the employer brand? And how is that done? Is it still done through discovery and just better storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that we're already seeing the trend that people are more comfortable posting on social media accounts about their work life. They actually see the value in sharing their ups and downs, being raw and honest about things that affect their careers in order to connect with like minded people as well, build a community. And I believe that we've already started to see a massive increase in people standing up and sharing experience about their current, previous, or even potential employers, like for example after their recruiting experience, either positive or negative. So I really think we're entering this unhinged corporate era where people will call out discrimination, they will call out mistreatment, they will give credit where credit is due. I see that all the time on LinkedIn as well, where people will say like they offered me more money, more opportunities, but I'm really happy with my team. So that's, it's still there. So it is about creating that experience where people feel valued, and companies are acknowledging that the well-being of the employees is not just a nice to have, but they should be doing better proactively, and prioritize their employees in that sense. And I also think, because of all the things that we kind of touched upon, that there in the next 2 years there are also going to be like a bit of a shift in how employer brand functions. It's broadening from like, typically placed maybe talent acquisition, and maybe even act more of as a change champion to work on improving organizations across different functions. um, just my own take on this, because simply driven by the fact that EB has already been taking up quite a lot more space. So in the future, I see it being really interwoven in other strategies like corporate brand, marketing initiatives, HR strategies, like from the get-go of being, instead of being an afterthought or a nice to have. So I think the future of employer brand will be more also about culture transformation, because it will be a crucial part why candidates would pick you over your competitor. So I think it will see more focus on that for sure.
I couldn't agree more in terms of the expansion of the mandate and the scope of employer branding. It's just, you can see how it impacts the entire organization. It's tied into the employee experience that's reflected through the employer brand, through the attraction of talent, through all of internal promotions, through anything that happens as an employee, from a recruiter reaching out to you, to getting a promotion, to retiring with that organization, is a part of your employer brand. So for the organization to be tucked into a component of it is not giving it the range it needs to be successful, to really tell a complete story. You're limiting the storytelling ability by just, not giving it the resources it needs, or tucking it in a part of an organization that it's just limited to what it can access. Would you agree with kind of that in terms of that's the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many touch points that actually you need to be aware of, know what's happening there, what are we doing to improve. It does affect everything from the first message to how your friend might talk about this company, to you seeing them at an event, to Glassdoor, to everything. And it's really about elevating those moments, and this is why this role is always keeping you on your toes. It's never a dull day. um, I can share like a maybe a book recommendation that really
Yes.
impacted me when I think about creating experiences at those touch points. So it's called The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, and it unpacks the idea of potential return and being intentional about creating extraordinary, often unexpected moments in maybe mundane everyday tasks, life kind of touch points. So actually from a business perspective, creating these peak moments intentionally can help to elevate well, in this topic, candidate and employee satisfaction. And when I was reading it, I was just, my mind was going at 100 miles an hour, because I really feel it's so underutilized. Like, we just think about like, okay, I need to send an email, but what if you rethink about how you formulate this, you do something. Honestly, it's a very good read for everyone who wants to rethink touch points, either for awareness, attraction, or even for retention. I think retention is another one that, a lot of the times, in my experience, employees do leave because they don't feel recognized, they don't feel valued. Talent acquisition, employer brand, all the people involved at the beginning might do such an amazing job trying to sell the company, bring them in, and then we see 5 years down the line, nobody even remembers somebody's anniversary. They feel like, okay, like all this new talents are being, I don't know, offered extra perks. So it's retention is also a key point where I think we could do a lot of things. So highly recommend this book.
The Power of Moments. It's on my list for sure. I think, these moments are happening every day in organizations thousands of times, and they're great opportunities to be aware of them, influence them in a positive way, and tell a story in terms of nurturing your employer brand. Sia, you have been fantastic. We've taken up too much of your time. It's evening time in Spain, so I appreciate you doing that. Before we log you off, where can people find you on all the social channels that you feel comfortable sharing with us all?
I really hope, thank you, Mike, for having me. I really hope you found value in this episode and took something away to think about for yourself or for the organization you're working on. If you want to continue the conversation, ask me questions, or just follow my thoughts, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. Sia Sevtsenko, that's my name. Basically, I talk about employer brand, cultivating a sense of belonging, inclusion, emotional intelligence, and all things mental health. So if you're interested in these topics, follow me.
And you want to follow Sia, her content is she's humble. It's fantastic. It's something that you want to pay attention to because it's great and it'll make you think about things differently. She is a disruptor in this space and is ahead of the transformation that's happening in employer branding. Sia, thank you so much. I think we got to have you back to talk about another topic within this because there's so many ways we could have gone, but I really appreciate your time. And thank you, everybody, for watching this week. And we will see you next week.
Thank you.